Thank you for joining CU Bands and Fans podcast. Our podcast is brought to you by Homegrown KIO. Homegrown KIO is on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. It is a stellar show featuring the great songs that have come from bands originating in Champaign, Urbana. Listen at 107.9 on your FM dial, at 1079wkio.com, or ask Alexa to play WKIO. Hello, and welcome to CU Bands and Fans podcast, where musicians tell their story. And tonight, our guest is Roger Prillaman. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Oh, you did a fine job.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're
also known as Dr. Roger Lee.
Yes, I go by many monikers: Dr. Roger Lee, Todd Modern. There are others, but we'll keep it clean.
I know, listen to our listeners. I know this is going to be a great podcast. I'm already laughing because we've had a pre-conversation before we started to record. So I will just try to maintain here. So Roger, what was your first band in, and was it in Champaign? Have you always been in Champaign, Urbana?
Well, close by. I'm a Vermilion County guy. I grew up north of Danville in a very small town, Rossville, Illinois. Class of 1970. And I started my first rock and roll band when I was 14 years old. And during high school, it was a wonderful period of time to be growing up, because WLS, the great common denominator, was playing all the hits of the day. The Rolling Stones, the Beatles, the Byrds, you name it. So it was about this time of year when I was finishing up my freshman year, and we had a band we put together to play at the annual talent show, and the name of our group was Behemoth. And we played about 3 or 4 songs, and I wasn't even a keyboardist then. I was playing bass guitar and a lead singer, and we played For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. We played Hey Joe, the Byrds version, and Steppin' Stones by the Monkees. And we did those 3 songs in front of the entire student body. And halfway through, the PA system that we hand built broke down. So they gave us the school PA system, which was, large voice of the theaters on the gym ceiling that drowned us out. And then the laughter of all 350 student body students laughing us off the stage. It was such an embarrassment. I just had to keep going. So we rehearsed all summer long, my freshman summer after high school. And by the time that the fall rolled around, we had a real band. And the name of our band was This Side Up. And we played all the school sock hops and all the teen centers up and down Route 1, the Dixie Highway, to south of Danville, up to Hoopston and Watsika, Kankakee. So that's where I came from.
Yeah,
the first serious band I was in, I was in a group called the Glass Factory, which I always thought was a great name for a band. And that was my freshman year of college. But then I picked up the Hammond organ, and I was playing in a group from Danville that was already very popular, but they were looking for a keyboard guy. And so this was the Plush Band, which I joined in 71. And we immediately became quite a hit here in Champaign, Urbana, playing at the Red Lion and Chances Are, the Second Chance on 6th Street. These were back in the days when everybody joined Blytham Limited, and Bob Nutt was our agent, and he booked us for all of the fraternities and sorority gigs here and over at ISU and Bradley and Peoria. And but the Plush Band, I was the only guy going to college. The other guys were full-time musicians. But somehow I would get up every morning and go to my classes here at the U of I, but still play 5-6 nights a week all over the Midwest. But when you're 19, 20 years old, you got a lot of energy, right?
Yeah, you could be up all night and get up in the morning, go do your thing, and be up all night again. Yeah.
Yep. And that's exactly what I do.
Yeah. So what was it like working with Blythe Unlimited? Because back in that day, obviously you had to have a booking agent. You didn't do your own booking, right?
Well, we did some of our own, but we actually signed an exclusive arrangement with Blytham, and Bob Nutt was our main agent there. We did some work with Irving Azoff early on, but more Bob. Irving is from Danville originally, but Bob Nutt loved our band because we would agree to play anywhere, anytime, just because we liked what we did so much. And some of our jobs were recurring jobs. And even though we had these recurring jobs already, we went ahead and let Blytham be our exclusive agent. And that was just a wonderful period of time.
Yeah. So when did you and how did you meet him? Did he come and see you guys and approach you, or how did that happen?
Boy, I specifically remember this. So this was a magic moment in time. And the year I think was in 71, late 71. And a band called The Guild, that was a very popular group out of the Belleville, East St. Louis area. They were a huge fraternity sorority band at Chances Are. And
Yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
yeah. So they only like to do 2 sets. Okay. So what they would do is hire a local band to play an hour before, and it was great for them, and it was good for local bands to get some exposure. So I was all of 19 years old, and somehow through a connection with our bass player George Jacks, he got us this gig to play for $50 at Chances Are to back the Guild up on a Saturday night. And there were about 900 people in the club that night. And the Plush Band was we did heavy music for the day. We were doing Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, Blood Rock, stuff that was very Hammond organ featured. And the crowd just loved us. And Bob Nutt was in the crowd that night, and so was John Barrick, who was REO's manager later on. And then they started booking us regularly, and we just took off, and it was great. And that group lasted for about 3 years while I was finishing up my undergrad degree here at the U of I.
Wow. And so then what happened with that band? What you just like?
Well, the group ultimately disbanded after I left. And most unfortunately, all the other 3 players have since passed on, which is really very sad because they were all really good musicians. Tony Stow was the guitar player, phenomenal guitarist. George Jacks, bass player and lead vocalist. Ron Kirst on drums. Brad Panleo came in the drums later on. So I left that group, and then I was invited to play in the band Games, which was the precursor to the rave we were talking about earlier. And I was still in my senior year, actually, of U of I undergrad. And Blytham was putting together this like super band, if you will. Garrett Osteich on lead guitar, Brian Cook on bass, Rick Newhouse on drums, and Dee Pearson from Peoria, and they were looking for a keyboardist. So I auditioned, and they said I got the gig. And it really conflicted me because I was planning on going on to law school at that point in time. But also, the chance to play in a group, and we were going to do mainly original material. So I decided, well, I'll stick around for a while. So I was in my senior year of undergrad, and I had applied and been accepted to law school. But I talked to the dean of the law school and then said, I got this opportunity to play in this really good rock and roll band, and maybe we're going to become superstars and rich and famous. And he said, well, why don't you defer your admission for a year? And I said, gosh, Dean, okay, I'll do that. So I did. So that would have been 76, I guess. Yes, a spring of 76. And so I deferred my admission to Indiana Law School for a year and played full time with the Games band. And that was a wonderful band. We wrote really wonderful songs together. They played a lot of these on 107.9. Ellie Fredrickson has featured us several times on that. But unfortunately, my law school admission only lasted, that deferment only lasted 1 year. And then the dean said, well, if you're going to go to law school at all, it's now or never. So I had to leave the games band to attend Indiana Law School in August of 1977. And the very first day of law school matriculation was the day that Elvis Presley died.
That was August 18th, right?
Some things you don't forget in this world.
Yeah.
So that takes me into law school, and I left the games band, which was actually turned out good for them because they couldn't find another keyboard player. So as I told you earlier, they got Kevin Heisel, who was the roadie from games, to put on a Steak and Shake hat and come up with the moniker of Herbert Tarrington. And then the rave was formed, and they reached wonderful success locally.
Yeah. I was telling Roger before you got on and we started recording that we had seen them at the Red Lion reunion, and that me and you were wearing Steak and Shake hats when Kevin came out to and were the rave. And it was so much fun, just brilliant music and musicians.
Now, if you'd like to hear a little serendipity, the gentleman that mixed the sound the night for the Red Lion reunion was my son, Kyle, who's also an attorney now. But he had a group called That's No Moon, and for several years he worked with Analog Outfitters doing live sound and studio sound. And so that was a little bit of a cycle of life, things going around.
He did such a fantastic job. I mean, that was kind of a big job that night. There was a lot.
Well, he's a pretty talented guy. We're very proud of him.
Definitely. Okay, so from there, now you're in law school. So did you just not play music during your whole law school time? Because law school is hard. It's consuming.
Yeah, it's like being in boot camp for 3 years, but it wasn't very much fun. But I enjoyed it. I did pretty well at it. I'll tell you something, if you promise not to tell anybody. all the groups I'd been in were pretty serious, and we were writing songs and so forth. But so I was going to Indiana Law School, and I was short on money. And there was an ad in the student union where they were looking for a keyboardist to play at the Holiday Inn at the Indianapolis International Airport. And the name of this band was Calendar. And they had a female lead singer who was a nurse at the Methodist Hospital over in Indianapolis. And they played every Fleetwood Mac song ever written. And so I joined the Calendar band to play at the Holiday Inn, and they paid me $175 per weekend.
Now that's not bad.
Good money. 78, 77, 78, something like that. Yeah.
Right there.
But during summers, I put together a band called Pilot, and we would play the Red Lion circuit and the Blytham circuit in both summers of law school. So even though I initially swore it off that I was just going to be a serious law student, but you can't. You got to keep playing, right?
Not if you got the music in you. Yeah, you got to find time for that music. So you have been a lawyer for how long? Are you still practicing law? Are you not retired or any of that?
No, I'm not. I'm still practicing. Well, I was sworn in summer of 1980 in Illinois, and I became licensed in California the following February of 81. And here it is, 2023. So I guess I'm in my 43rd year of practicing law. And so what happened was I was in my second year of law school in Indiana, and I chose to go to law school in Indiana so I could get away from Champaign, Urbana to be a serious student, okay? but they did this nasty thing where they really jacked up the price of out-of-state tuition my second year of law school. And so I came crawling back to Illinois, to Champaign, to finish law school here at the great University of Illinois. And my third year of law school, I wasn't playing much, but I started in management. And I managed a group called Willard Cratchlow from Danville that were friends of mine.
Yeah.
And I used to book bands from the basement of the law school. There, they only had one phone, and I would commandeer that phone to book bands. But I would hang out at Blytham quite a bit also, and so that's what I did my third year of law school. And then in my first year of law practice, I put together a band called The Edge, which was Tim Donaldson, Dodie Cosmetti, Roger Freese on bass, and Dodie was playing keyboards also. And I was the manager. At this point, I was thinking I was going to go more into management and the business of music. So the Edge band started in about 80, 81. And we had won an album contest, B&Q, I think it was, Naptown in Indianapolis, with a song called Fine Line that was co-authored by Dennis Cronin and Danny Gurna. And so the Edge band was born while I was getting started practicing law. And the idea was we were going to move the group to California. And this was a new wave band, and we were going to be like the Knack, or the Cars or something. But that didn't quite materialize. Dodie decided that she wanted to go in a different direction. We had a bunch of contracts to fulfill. So I said, well, I'll step in and finish playing keyboards with the band. So I set the management aside and started playing music again. And the Edge lasted for about a year. And then one night when I'm getting ready to go see Sam and Dave at the Poison Apple, a fellow named Tim Veer, lead singer of Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets, stopped me and said, and I was going by Todd Modern already at that time as my stage name. He said, hey, Mr. Modern, our keyboard player, Johnny Hahn, is leaving to move to Seattle, and we're looking for somebody. He said, I know you're getting ready to move to California, but if you could help us out and sit in for a while, we'd be most appreciative. And I said, okay. Well, that was November of 1981, and we're still playing in 2023. How about that?
So that's how many years that you've been in Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets?
Yeah, they actually started in 1980, I think August of 80, and they were a band for about a year when I joined. Okay, so I'm not technically an original member. I'm just a lowly blind rivet.
That's like around 41 years.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
So how did that work to where you stuck with this band for that long? I mean, forever. I mean, basically forever.
In reality, it's all fun. Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets has always been about fun. We're actually pretty good musicians, and we have good vocals, and we put on a great show. And all of our tunes are attuned towards danceability, and they're great rock tunes from the day, 50s and mainly 60s, a few 70s thrown in there. But the reality of it is we're all really good friends, and we met here at the U of I and so forth. And Tim Beer, Mark Rubel, myself, Jeff Evans, otherwise known as Buster Doordown, and we never did it full time, which I think is part of the secret. We all have other jobs, and but we would convene on weekends to do it. So it was a great release. We call it Captain Rat therapy. And we got pretty popular, played all over the place, and actually made some money by accident. And we don't really do much to actively book ourselves, but people call and they want us to play, and we say okay, and so we'll just keep on doing it. Why not?
Yeah. Excuse me. I know when I began CU Bands and Fans, that was one of the bands that I heard. I mean, people were like, you have got to go check out Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets. And I mean, they would tell me that over and over again. So when a show did come up, I made sure and went to see it. And sure enough, what a blast. You
Yeah.
know, I think it was a street thing. I'm not sure if it was a fundraiser or what it was. I don't know what it was, but it was fun. That much I do know. And it was a lot of dancing and a lot of just the kind of costumes and, you know, kind of the craziness that Mark Rubel does with all these different props and things like that. Made it very entertaining and interesting. Not to mention the talent was just insurmountable.
Well, thank you very much. Here's a little tidbit that's quite poignant. We played a gig last December in Springfield at one of the country clubs there on the lake. And it was a surprise 40th wedding anniversary that the children of the lucky couple were throwing for their parents. And these kids were in their mid-30s. And they said, yeah, our parents have been married for 40 years. And your band played their wedding reception in Springfield at Bowers Opera House in 1982, you know. So we had to do it, right? So talk about going full circle, right?
I bet the parents, the anniversary couple, well, I bet they were just elated that you guys were playing.
Well, they were elated that number one, we were still alive, and, and number two, still together.
You said a few things in this podcast already that's made you've gone from era to era, because I mean you talked about like having, well, first of all, the Blythe, you know, era, that and then well, the high school era, and then when you said that they only had one phone, that's like, that is not a cell phone, people, that he's talking about.
I know. Times have changed.
And you've been through all these different eras in music, and with music, and obviously with law as well, but and you also mentioned that you were involved with the POGO Studios. Not only involved, but you were part of this great.
Right. The precursor to POGO Records recording studio with Mark Rubel was Faithful Sound over on like Clark Street in Urbana. It's no longer there. But when Mark decided to move downtown, he and I partnered up. And so we initially went in together in a partnership. And the idea was that Mark would do the recording, take care of the technical end, and I would do the legal and the business end. And we would try to sign local bands and put together production company and get them off the ground, and, you know, to New York, to Nashville, to California and whatnot. And we did that for several years. But most fortunately, I got married and started having children, and practice of law is quite time consuming, and something had to give. And so I bowed out of POGO, and then that became Mark's solo project all these years. And what a wonderful run he had with POGO Studio here in Champaign, Urbana. And yeah,
It's legendary around here.
Yeah.
So, but and you also mentioned like Allyson Krause was part of you. Didn't you say you worked with her or recorded?
Yes, she was when Allyson was young, like 14 years old. I knew her parents, Fred and Louise Krause, and I'm one of the few attorneys downstate that really knew much in the way of music law, entertainment law, publishing, copyright, trademark, that type of thing. And so Fred and Louise asked me if I would assist with Allyson's early business dealings. And so I have the great honor and privilege of having represented Allyson Krause in her very first record contract with Rounder Records. And I could be wrong, but I think she was like 14, 15 years old at the time. And she, graduated from high school and then moved on down to Nashville. And then the rest is history. But she has stayed with Rounder all these years. And her younger brother Victor used to come into my office, and we'd help him fill out copyright forms and that type of thing. But I do recall one funny story. I hope it's okay to say this. I don't think I'm violating any attorney-client privilege here, but when Allyson was graduating from high school, her dad, Fred, thought that it might be best that she stay here in Champaign and attend the U of I to major in music, and thought that maybe I should have a chat with her to convince her that would be the thing to do instead of moving to Nashville. And I told Fred that, Fred, I respect you greatly and I understand your concerns as a parent. I said, but Allyson really needs to move to Nashville as fast as she can because she's got what it takes. And so he said, you really think so? I said, yes, I really do. And so she moved to Nashville when she was like, I don't know, 17, 18, right after school.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. So yes,
Yeah.
that was a wonderful chapter of her life. And I was always elated to be part of it, to help her out then.
Her brother Victor was in town here quite a while.
Yeah.
He was in I can't think of the name of the band.
Was he in the Funky Butt band?
That was one, but he was in Difficult Listening.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he actually went the formal route. I think he majored in music and got a real degree here and everything. But I don't know. I told Fred, I said, if she goes to Nashville, it doesn't work out, the buildings at the U of I will still be here. She can come back anytime she wants. Or they got Vanderbilt down there, right? So
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, success story right there. Because her voice is just tremendous.
yeah.
We're really well, of course, but that's the way Champaign Urbana is. There's just so much incredible talent. It's incredible. I mean, I'm speechless at how much there is here. And that's those that just chose to stay here. Not even those that have gone on and become, like REO Speedwagon and Head East and all of that. But those that chose to stay here are still just deeply talented.
Oh, there's so much talent here. And in some ways, kind of unfortunate that more musicians from Champaign, maybe they should have moved to Los Angeles, Nashville, New York, because really, a lot of the musicians and the groups that really made it and became major recording artists, they really don't have much of anything over on the musicians here in Champaign Urbana. There's just tremendous talent in this town. There always has been. We were talking about the Games Band earlier. I was rooming with a guy named Donnie Markham at the time, who was a tremendous steel guitar player with the Jesse Ross Band. And they were a good band. This was back during the country rock era, and anyway, Bruce Hall was the bass player for Jesse Ross when he got the call to join REO Speedwagon. And I remember Donnie saying his salary was going from $50 a week to $750 a week. and within a matter of months, he bought a house in Beverly Hills, so.
But they just played on KIO, Homegrown KIO, some Jesse Ross band stuff.
Oh, yeah, they were really good. Yeah.
They were, I was blown away listening to that. I was just like, who is this in here? And
Jeff Kerr was in that band too.
Who?
Jeff Kerr. Jeff Kerr was in that band too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesse Ross. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I am listening to Homegrown KIO. Out because at the Red Lion reunion, of course, I got to hear a lot of the ones that I didn't when I was going out to hear live music. They had either were dissipated or, whatever. I graduated in 77, and from the time I was 16 to now, I would go out and hear live music. I loved it. Love live music.
Yeah. Somehow, when I was 16 years old, they let me into the Red Lion.
There's
When
so
I
many.
was 16, I looked like I was 11. And we were drinking slow gin fizzes. And the band that was playing that night was the Esquires. And oh my God, were they good. But, and then, a few years later, but the Red Lion scene, the Games band played there a lot. And Jesse Ross, the guitar player, the band that did all the Led Zeppelin stuff. I'm sorry.
Clockwork Orange.
Well, that was actually they were more of a Mabel's band, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm having a senior citizen moment here.
That's okay.
But the Red Lion was a scene, and on any off night, other musicians from other bands would be in the crowd, and so all the musicians. It was like Slink Rand. That was the name of the band. I could.
Yes.
Yeah.
When do
Yeah.
so the Red Lion, when did that begin to just taper off and taper down and not be so much of a live music?
I'm going to guess early 80s. I do remember about the time that Mabel's was taking off, which was about 1979, 80, 81. But people oftentimes would make the rounds. They would go to Mabel's for a while. They'd go see who's playing at Red Lion. They'd go to Panama Reds, Ruby Gulch for a while.
Mm-hmm.
See the Pork and Havana Ducks at Panama Reds, and then some Elvis Brothers at Mabel's, and the Rave down at the Red Lion. So yeah, what a wonderful period of time for live music in this community.
It was so great, and that's exactly what I did. I would go to Mabel's, Elvis Brothers. I went to all of Panama Reds was my place, and any place that Pork and Havana Duck played, I was there. They play at the Embers.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the Embers? Yeah. It's anywhere they were, I was, except for I didn't go to Decatur because I was young and I didn't want to do all that driving, but Prairie Lands and just all those places. And it just, I tell you something, I was going to ask you this because you've been through so many eras, that do you sometimes, I think this kind of hit me when I was listening to KIO the other night, Sunday night, which would have been last night, is do you ever just really miss, and do you feel like this sadness when you see kind of an era shifting or changing? Do you experience any of that?
Well, yes. I think all of us senior citizen musicians now, or the elderly statesmen, so to speak, we do miss those days when it was a real scene. And if somebody were to ask, why isn't live music as prominent today as it was a generation ago, it's hard to really figure that out. I hate to sound like a fuddy-duddy, but I really wonder about the invention of cell phones and gaming and computers, because people entertain themselves. But live music, when it first became the thing back in the 60s with the Beatles and everything that followed, everybody loved live music. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, there were like 30 bands from Danville alone, which was my stomping ground. And there had to be 50 bands from Champaign, Urbana, and there were places for all these bands to play. I tell people this, that when I was going to undergrad, I never had to take out a single student loan. I didn't even ask my parents for any assistance. I was making that much money from playing in the plush band and games that I didn't need student loans. You made good money back then.
Volumes. That right there, because now it's such a struggle to play and make money. decent money, I think,
Yeah.
for these musicians and the venues. And there's just such a shift in the venues and the music. But yeah, I mean, we've got great live music. We've got great talented musicians and a fantastic music community here in Champaign-Urbana and the surrounding areas. But it's just, I think maybe it's the fans, like you were saying. The way they entertain themselves now is they'd rather, most of the younger people, and I'm not trying to sound like, an old fuddy-duddy either, but we're doing all we can to keep younger people interested, younger people, like you have First Gig Rock and Roll Camp, which is fantastic. That is one thing we support 100%, because these kids go in, they learn how to play an instrument, they learn how to be in a band, they learn how to write a song, they learn how to work together, and then they perform live at the end of it, to people, and it gets them hooked. They're hooked. And then we've got some new younger bands that came out of the COVID era, the COVID years, and they had gotten themselves together. They had did some recording, and now they're out playing live gigs, and they're original music. They're playing original music, which that's a fantastic thing. But I do feel like, I think I was watching Elton John's concert, and then of course Journey had their 50th anniversary tour, and all our national bands that we grew up with are, kind of, that's kind of it. It's kind of like Elton John's last thing, and I'm like, hey, this is just makes me so sad.
Well, I tell people,
yeah. Go ahead.
Certainly the graying of the rock and rollers. I mean, the real formative acts. Most of these musicians are late 70s, into their 80s now. We saw Alice Cooper last Tuesday at that State Farm Center. What a wonderful show. The guy's 75 years old. He might as well be 55. He's still great. Of course, he has the wisdom of surrounding himself with really good younger musicians. But and that's one of the great things about being a musician as opposed to being an athlete. You can continue to play well into your twilight years. I mean, look at the blues musicians in Chicago that play way into their 80s and so forth. Paul McCartney's still going strong. He's turning 80 here in this next month.
Paul played practically till the day he died, and he was in his 90s.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, he played like a Monday every month at some place. Mark Rubel had the honor of interviewing Les Paul and hanging out with him during a performance there. So yeah, you just because you're getting older, and people ask us, well, when are you going to retire? And I say, well, why should I? We still enjoy it, and people still come and so forth. Now, what we're sort of seeing with Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets, some of our fans kind of waned for a period of time when they were having kids and then having grandkids, and now their grandkids are like graduating from college, so they're ready to party again.
I remember, I don't know if this was 10 or 15 years ago, 10 years ago, Tim Donaldson had been in some band that called it Quits. And I remember I was sitting with him on a curb in Urbana during the Sweet Corn Festival. And he goes, I'm putting together a new band, and I got Roger Prillaman to play keyboards. He said, don't tell anybody about it just yet. But that became Tommy D and Blind Justice, which I thought was a great name, because Tim Donaldson owns the blind man, and you're an attorney, so you're the justice part. So that was a great name.
That's how I'm the guy. I thought of that because yeah, Timmy D and Blind Justice, and that was a really fun band, and there was some serious talent in that group.
Oh yeah,
and Tim's son Ben on drums, a phenomenal drummer, and Dave Cohen on bass, a wonderful musician and good songwriter. And Tim and I had to really kind of up our game a little bit to play with the guys. But we were doing a lot of Deep Purple in that, and I really had to rehearse a lot, get my my aging fingers more nimble to play. But yeah, that band was very fun. Lasted about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure you're aware too, Zach, that Tim and I then and Ben also were part of the Mojo project. We did a great cover of
Right, right. Yeah.
tribute to Tom Petty, and we had such fun. He had such a great response. We said, well, let's keep going with that. So so we played for a couple of years. COVID was our downfall there. Then people moved away and went back to college and that type of stuff. But we actually may do a Mojo gig up in Lombard in September or October. We've had some interest there. So
cool.
Yeah, I love doing the side things. Captain Rat's my mainstay.
Michael Carpenter is great as
Tom Petty. Yeah.
Petty. Yeah.
Yeah. He is a very serious talent.
Yeah, I absolutely loved going to a Mojo show. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really an incredible, that was something that, I could see that not being every weekend thing, but just, every other or once a month or every quarter, something like that. But when you experience that, it's incredible.
I never really thought of myself about being in a tribute band. But once we did it, it seemed to work okay. And even though we really did want to sound a lot like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, we still kind of put our own signature on what we were doing.
Yeah.
We didn't endeavor to try to look like the Players, like a lot of Beatle tribute bands do. But I think we did a pretty good job of being authentic to the Tom Petty sound and still having, our own authenticity to it. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. But COVID screwed up a lot of things in this world, and the music scene, first and foremost, was really hard on musicians, especially touring acts during that period of time.
Yeah, it was very hard because it wasn't just like a small period of time. It was like a year, 2 years, of just really screwing things up. So the bounce back is taking some time, and we've got a good bounce back going on. I mean, our event list is just,
Yes.
but I think it's taken the venues a little longer to do a bounce back, as well as it ended up just closing some of them just permanently.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So that's the thing, is balancing those, the music with the places to play it's off scale, so it's been tipped.
Well, it's hard to say that COVID is over, but at least we're getting back to a semblance of normalcy.
Yes.
Just this past week in my practice of law, the federal court system said we're going to now lift the COVID restrictions. And I said, thank God. We haven't had a lot of in-person court hearings. We're doing a lot of things telephonically, some things by Zoom. And it's nice to be back in person and really see fellow human beings again and interact.
Yeah. There's nothing like that. And that's why the live music experience is so special, because there's nothing like being there, actually watching the band live, and dancing and being involved and just being around people. You can only be on machines for so long. I mean, it drives me crazy. I got to get off the computer and get around people. I don't know how that generation behind us does it. Drives me insane. I'm like, you got to get outside a little while, and thank God for summer too. Oh, that's the other thing. Winter was brutal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you have, outside of the one that you mentioned, which is not around here, but is Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets planning on anything this summer here in Champaign-Urbana?
Yes, we've got several things of interest to our viewers. For the last several years, we've played in Arthur, Illinois for their annual fireworks freedom celebration. and that's going to be on July 1. They always do it the weekend ahead of July 4th. And that's just a phenomenal time. I mean, a huge crowd, 30,000 people or something. And we play before the fireworks. And if you've never seen the Arthur fireworks, they are, the best in the area. So that's coming up. We're playing a really cool gig in Springfield the last June 30th. Unfortunately, it's a private gig, but it's the National GTO Convention. Pontiac GTO owners. And
Cool.
of course, we play car songs and surf songs. So that's a natural for us. But a guy from New York City had heard about our band and booked us for that coming up.
That's awesome.
But a gig that we're going to do Labor Day weekend, which I've never done, is the Hoopston Sweet Corn Festival.
Oh,
That's-
yeah.
On Saturday, September 2nd, the family stage outdoors in the afternoon, like 2 to 5. And over the years, they've asked us to play, but there's always been a conflict. And so this year we decided to do it. We do a lot of private things. We got a Chicago wedding reception we're doing up at a nice Italian restaurant on State Street coming up in August. We're doing the Westfield Homecoming. It's a town down near Charleston area, I think. Here's one at the Willow Ridge Winery in Shelbyville, Illinois, July 15. So we've got our share of summer, fairs and festivals, and we're playing about as much as what we want to. It's a little difficult for us to get together. Tim's in Chicago, Jeff and I are here in Champaign, Mark's down in Nashville. He's got a real busy schedule, and we can't play all the gigs that are offered to us, but Mark loves to come back and play with us whenever possible.
These are all great gigs though.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Of course Arthur, but the Hoopston, I've heard, I haven't been, but the Hoopston Sweet Corn Fest is, I hear a lot of good things about it. So that'll be a blast.
Well, when I was in high school and played trumpet in the marching band, we would always have to play in our wool uniforms when it was about 95 degrees. So I well remember the Hoopston Sweet Corn Festival. But this is my first time there in a rock and roll band, I guess we'd say.
Do you choose what you're going to wear in the Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets? Because we all know Mark, he puts all these props on and all this crazy stuff that it takes so much energy to do that. But do you choose what you're going to wear, or do you guys all like coincide with each other? And
no, not at all. The surprising thing about Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets, we never really sit down and discuss and plan out anything. Everything that you see has come about just totally extemporaneously. We're a totally impromptu band. We do not use set lists, for example. We go from one song into the next, and it's just like a freight train going down the side of a mountain. And we say, we know each other so well. We have little hand signals we do as to which song comes next. We can't compete with Mark Rubel in the attire department. So he does whatever he does. I don't know. I used to be sort of, the cool black leather guy. My persona's changed over time, I guess. Tim always wears the captain's hat and does sort of the beach boy, surfing kind of guy. We don't plan. We don't discuss anything. Somebody will bring something new once in a while and we'll laugh about it, But
I think I've always, whenever I've seen you, I think you've always been in a suit.
Well, yeah, I like to wear, I like to be a little formal, I guess,
Yeah.
Maybe that's the attorney thing coming out in me or something.
But no hat. Like you usually don't wear a hat or anything like that.
Well, now I got my Captain Rat hat on tonight. This is one of my Dr. Roger Lee hats that I don.
Oh yeah.
And then I got my hat here. That's my Benmont Tench hat, from Mojo here that I wear.
Yeah.
He and I are the same age, by the way. Isn't that revolting?
Oh, wow.
So,
You know, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
man,
Here, can I show you guys a close up of something?
sure.
Okay. So
I was going to ask you to do that. I'm so glad you did that.
all right. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the games band, and Garrett Osteik's in the middle. And so here I am down on the keys. Can you see
Okay,
this?
raise that up because we can't see you. There you go.
Okay.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm 24 years old there.
Wow.
I had just, it was 1976. I remember this gig. It was the New Student Week here on Green Street at the U of I. Games was the featured band, huge stage, about 10,000 kids. You know, they blocked off Green Street, and I got all my hair then, and got the David Cassidy look-alike thing going on. Rick Newhouse on drums. He ended up being in Combo Audio later on, and off Broadway, and Brian Cook, but Garrett Osteik from the Rave later. So
Who did
Yeah.
the poster?
Brian did the logo. I got Captain Rat superimposed on games. Sorry about that.
I thought so.
And here's the Blytham Limited logo down here, of course. Anyway,
It
I
was
just
so
had to share that with you. So I was 24 years old then, and I just turned 70 on my last birthday. I'm still doing this nonsense.
That's we love that. And I hope you just keep doing it. Did so but who did that cover or that poster?
Well, Brian Cook, our bass player and lead singer, he has an art degree from Chicago Institute of Art. And so Brian, he did almost all of our artwork in-house, and he really talented. We had a number of different logos, and yeah, everybody loved that about our band. You know, we had great promo back in the day.
Yeah, that's something I guess being a photographer and that kind of, you know, always being a photographer is just, I always look at especially the old posters.
Yeah.
Because I love that. I love to look at old posters of bands like that one you just showed. And then I'm like, I wonder who did that or how they did it, because you know that was back in the day where when you didn't have all this digital and graphic art.
Now
going.
the Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets logo, the star with the circle and the rat superimposed on it. Tim Veer, our guitar player, designed that. He's an engineer by trade, but he's also a very talented artist as well. He's got both the left and the right side of the brain going on for him. But if you've seen any of our records, like Fighting Illini in Pasadena, you know, the caricature of the band, you know, with the captain, the Rats logo on the top of the guys, you know, with the Woody and so forth. Tim did all that stuff. You know, he's you know, really talented.
And then because I guess Blythe did this for you, or did you guys go around and put posters and windows of everything? And how did you get your? Yeah, you did the footwork.
Well, yeah, back in the day before the internet, like Captain Rat gigs at Mabel's, we'd just really pack them in early to mid 80s, clear into the 90s. We would pay a person to go around and put posters all over campus, all over downtown Champaign. And then we had mailers. We had like well over 1,000 people on our Captain Rat mailing list that we would send out. The amount of money we spent on postage was pretty impressive. But you know, it's all entertainment. It was all fun, and you sort of made the money back. So, you know. So now all you do is get a Facebook page that doesn't cost you anything. So maybe that's one reason bands don't have to make as much money today, because most things are free on the internet.
They're not paying for postage. Or paying somebody to scatter around and put them like everywhere in all the predominant places on a campus. But again, I just kind of miss that, that old school way.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. It's probably because that was my era, and otherwise,
Well, I have mixed emotions. I think there's a lot of wonderful music today, and there is a happening music scene. And as you pointed out, there's never an end to talent that comes up through the ranks, right? I mean, so many. I think about all the kids that have been born and have become stars during the pendency of the tenure of Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets, for example. I mean, think about all the people that have been born that have made it in show business over the last 43 years that our band has been together. So, we have an endless lineage of young artists still coming up the ranks all the time. I have a 15-year-old granddaughter that's playing guitar in Chicago right now and doing, having a great time with it. And so, it'll keep going. But you're very correct. There was something about that window of time from the late 50s through the mid 70s, even early 80s. That was a magic moment in time. And whether it could ever be replicated, I don't know. I liken it to classical music, of Mozart and Beethoven and so forth. There's not a whole lot of really great classical music being written today, but music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, I think it's going to be around several hundred years from now.
Yeah. Thank God for, recordings and all of that. And on KIO too, which is something that impresses me, on Homegrown KIO, is they played some music and that was live recorded in the venue. And it sounds fantastic.
Yes.
This wasn't recorded like, how things are recorded today. This is recorded back in, the 70s, when you had to use, because remember when we had Sean on, Zach?
Mm-hmm.
Remember we had Sean on? He talked about how he going with that tape recorder and all of that to record jazz and document that kind of thing and archive it. Which just cracks me up. But that's the work that it takes. I was talking to John, also known as Yan Man, who is an artist, and he's really progressing in his music. And but he was telling me that he had went to POGO Studios, which blew my mind. I was like, I never knew that about you. And he was like, yeah, I went to POGO Studios, and he goes, I worked with Mark, and he goes, back then it was those huge tapes. You recorded on those great big reels.
Oh yeah.
And then go ahead.
But that was good. That's analog recording, okay? And Mark used to have the original mixing console that the Shadows of Night mixed Gloria on in Chicago.
Oh wow.
And so but keep in mind the Beatles did all of their recording on a 4-track recorder. When we were in the Games band, we used to rehearse out in Tolono, which is now Matt from Hum's studio out there. And we had an 8-track TAC recorder. And so we were really state of the art because we had 8 tracks. And, about that time, 16-track was becoming popular. And then later on 32, then you switched over to digital and all that just became irrelevant, I guess. But
well, let me ask you one more question and then we'll close this out.
Right.
And it may not be a fair question either, really. But what was your favorite band to play with that you were in?
Well, that is a tough question, okay? But and it's sort of a tie. I guess I'll go that route and cop out. I grew up with the Plush Band from Danville, okay, and we were a really good band and instrumentally and so forth, and we just played together all the time. I love playing with the games group because we were largely an all original band, and we were very collaborative in writing songs, and that was great. But in terms of, sure.
Let me ask you something in that regard, because original music in that time, would you say it was better received than it is now?
Well, amongst our age group, yes, okay, because I think people that want to go out and see, No Secret at the Clark Bar, where we used to play, for example, they want to hear their favorite songs from the time period they were growing up. All right, but the Red Lion, for example, was known as being the place to go to watch local bands play original material. There was quite a dichotomy between the Red Lion and Chances Are. Chances Are was more the fraternity and sorority crowd, and they wanted to see the cover bands like the Guild doing Beach Boys and that type of thing. But no, if you went to the Red Lion and then later on Mabel's, people really wanted to hear original material like Combo Audio, Nick's, 186, the Elvis Brothers. But I really enjoyed that in the games band. We wrote some pretty good songs together, and had the group stayed together, who knows where it would have gone. But as far as just pure unadulterated fun and entertainment value, you can't beat being a member of Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets. I mean, it's been a great run, and we played just all over the place. And our trips to California with the Fighting Illini, and we used to play down in Bahamas, at the Atlantis facility there, and the several hundred weddings we've played, and bar mitzvahs and all that. It's just a great time. And so if music is fun, then Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets is the most fun I've ever had and continue to have.
Yeah, continue to have. Yeah, that's a long running. Yeah, I figured as much because you could tell that you kind of got a heart for games and those previous bands. I guess because that's your beginning years and and all of that. But did games record some music? Is there somewhere I can find?
Yeah, in fact, L.A. Fredrickson has played that on the WKIO homegrown hours. In fact, I think just a week or two ago, we recorded about 8 original tunes, and they were really good. A lot of great guitar work by Garrett. That's when I was doing Hammond organ and synthesizers, and we had sort of an English sound to us, and great vocals too. So there was some really, really good music that came out of that group, and the Edge as well. We had some pretty good new wave type tunes in the Edge.
I'll get a hold of David Leake and ask him to send me a few of those. So then one more question, is one thing led to another here. One more question really quick. Because I don't know this. I absolutely have no idea. Is there a difference between a Hammond organ and an organ?
Well, yeah. Well, in the old days, I used to carry around an actual Hammond B3, okay? And that's the big wooden thing. They're beautiful and just a wonderful invention. And of course, if you got the Hammond B3, you got to have the 147 Leslie with the spinning tone cabinet, you got to have those. And there's a great photo, I think it's on the Red Lion Facebook, of our band Games. And we're playing at the Rites of Spring in Bloomington, Illinois. And this would have been the spring of 76 or 7, I forget. And we're playing with Thin Lizzy. And there's a shot of me from behind me, and with my Hammond B3 and my stacked Leslies, and a sea of about 10 or 15,000 college kids out there. And so, yeah, but now I still play a Hammond, but it weighs 35 pounds. It's purely
Yeah.
electronic, has the Leslie built right into it. But you know, we haven't talked about roadies, all right? But in the days of games, we always had 3 or 4 guys on our road crew, a 24-foot truck, a monster PA. You know, we got hired one time to back up Little Richard at the Bloomington Red Lion. Would have been about 75. And the reason we got hired because we had the best PA system of any band in town.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, you backed up Little Richard?
Yes.
Well,
Wow.
you say that at the end of this podcast.
Well, you know, and not only did we back him up, but while we were still playing, he was standing by the stage on the near the off the side of the stage, watching me play the Hammond organ.
Wow.
And we rented all of our equipment to him. Oh, yeah, this was during Little Richard's time where he had like the bouffant hairdo, and he was on a religious kick. Yeah, he was a preacher, I think. But he tried to convert us after the show. But there must have been, you know, 1,500 people crammed into the Red Lion in Bloomington that night. It was a great venue.
That is
Yeah.
great. You have had some really fun, great, awesome experiences.
Well, one of these days, if I ever do retire or semi-retire, I will write a book of memoirs, and it's going to be called "The Places That My 10 Little Fingers Have Taken Me." But you know, in the games band, for example, Garrett Osteich and Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick were friends. They both played the Kickapoo Creek Rock Festival together. Rick Nielsen with Fuse, Garrett with the Finchley Boys. And one time we played with Cheap Trick and Tiny Tim up in Rockford at some big grocery store turned into a nightclub. So that was a pretty good time. But yeah, I've had some brushes with fame, and it's all been good. And I hope it continues as long as we can do it. I'll say, you know.
Yeah.
And that's good to hear. It's good to hear that. I love it.
Well, I'm fortunate. I'm 70 years old. I don't feel like I'm 70. I don't know what you're supposed to feel like at 70. I
just turned 70 last November, so we're pretty close, I guess.
Okay, so you were born in 52 also, right, Zach?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're young guys, right? I think 70 is like what 50 used to be, but I just started collecting my Social Security. I don't even know what to do with it. You know, it's like who knows? But so we'll just keep going, right? You have any plans to retire?
Not at the moment.
Well, me either.
I like my job. I really like what I do. So
yeah, I kind of do. Practice of law is like, it's not something you like, but you feel good about it because you're helping people, and you're doing something productive in theory. But that's why I like to play music, because it's so different than practicing law, and the two kind of balance each other out somehow. I don't play golf. I play rock and roll. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
Plus, music helps people in more ways. So. Yeah, more ways than you guys would ever realize. Honestly, I don't think musicians realize the truest impact that they have on a soul. So,
well, I know both of you guys used to come to the Clark Bar when No Secret would play.
Yeah, I was there all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I mean, I love playing with Dodie and Tim Donaldson. The harmonies we come up with and the level of musicianship is really incredible. And I look out into the audience and I see people watching us, and I can tell they're having a great time. And that makes me feel good. And, you know, so it's a symbiotic thing. And that's what it's all about, to play music and to bring happiness to other people and to yourself in the process.
Yeah, and that's what matters. And we will end on that. It's been an absolute pleasure, Roger. Thank you so much for being on our podcast. And
thank you.
we'll definitely, hopefully we'll have you back again. And we won't wait for an end of an era. We'll catch you like in the middle of this one. this upcoming year.
Well, if not earlier, I'll see you on my 80th birthday. How about that?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a wonderful time. I'm really honored and privileged that you've asked me to be part of this.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's been a blast. So hang in there when we get done recording, okay? Don't go anywhere.